We have with us today DGP Venugopal K. Nair, who will talk about policing, the reforms, and the subject which he has always loved. Welcome to Media, sir. So, what is the perception of the public about police in general?
The general perception of the public with regard to the police has been rather poor, and I suppose that is more because of the fact that the police has not been able to respond in many circumstances the way the people are expecting it. Further, I think the police have not evolved over the period of time to be in tune with the changing needs of society also. So generally the perception of the public has also gone down mainly due to this. The police are supposed to fulfill a type of role that the public expectation is about. And as you know, the society today has transformed itself from what it used to be in the 50s and 60s to what it is now. So the dynamic change that was expected to happen in the policing has somehow not happened. We still follow some of the old procedures, we still follow some of the old rules, but the result is that the outcome of most policing has not been satisfactory. That is why the perception about the police by the public has not improved.
The present scenario, there is perceptible dissatisfaction about policing as a service, especially youngsters and the teenagers. What is your comment on this?
Well, the most important thing about the youngsters looking upon the police is generally sort of conditioned by what they see in their day-to-day interaction with them. Understand one thing, that the policing is different in the urban areas as well as in the mofussil or rural areas. So those people who grow up in the urban areas generally will have a very, very poor opinion about policing, because that's what they see about police over here. So also in the rural areas also, there are certain areas where, as you know, policing still today has to really change in its character, in all its sort of thing, functioning itself. So with the result that the general opinion that the public or the youngsters will have will be rather poor. And you can't blame them for that, because it is something with the experience on a day-to-day basis also, mostly in rural areas. And in urban areas, well, to a large extent they may not be interacting excepting with the traffic police in general urban areas. But otherwise, with so many other avenues open and so many other sort of new things opening up in the technological sectors and all, I think policing is losing its sheen, because that feeling of public service, the feeling of being able to contribute to society, that has sort of come down dramatically over a period of time. Because in our times and all that, and even before that, there was an idealistic content to taking up a job in the police. It was not so much at what you got in financial terms, than the terms of satisfaction that you were doing something for society.
So our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, has laid emphasis and importance on smart policing. As a senior level IPS officer, having served for 35 long years, what is your take on this?
I'm very happy, because this is the first time that the Prime Minister, that too a Prime Minister like Mr. Narendra Modi, has really looked upon policing as being very, very important and instrumental to bring about a change in society. A transformation in society will also be only possible if the police is also taken on board. And that is the first thing. Smart policing generally, from whatever I gather, is that it entails being responsive. It entails being proactive. And I think it also entails being competent in all levels. Understand that there is a bit of a divide between policing in different areas depending upon the technological advances that are available for various type of police forces. Further, in the police also, if you notice, the officer cadre will be highly educated. Today, most of them are from IIM, IITs, etc., who take to policing also. Whereas in at the subordinate level, you'll find that may not be perhaps there to a large extent, excepting in a couple of states like my state, for example, Kerala, where even the police constables generally have minimum standards of graduation, etc. So because of that, we need to bring about a dramatic change. We have to make them savvy with the latest technological tools available. We have to make them aware of the societal changes that are happening in terms of what the society perceives as being right and as being wrong. Today there is dramatic change even in society for a simple matter that many of those things which were considered criminal or which was considered at one time not acceptable, today has been taken as being acceptable practices. So if we don't change with that, many a time there is a dichotomy between what we act upon, because police still tend to act upon what is laid down. And many a time what is laid down is not in conformity with what society has changed.
True.
So this is something where I think smart policing to a large extent will be able to address, and that is a fantastic sort of a move on the part of the Prime Minister, and also the fact that the Prime Minister personally is involved in understanding the policing ethos as well as the policing functioning to that extent will help the police to change itself, to bring it about that change that is very important today in today's world.
So a recent report submitted by 3 states, I think UP, Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu, has said that there's a trust deficit amongst Muslims and policemen. What is your comment on this?
This question about trust deficit is something that is highlighted more in certain areas with regard to certain sort of certain specific sort of instances, etc. Now let me tell you something. As a matter of fact, when I was the zonal IG in a place in Malabar, I had faced a couple of very serious incidents in the aftermath of whatever transpired in Gujarat. We had what is called the Marad incident, 2 of them, where it was actually a communal sort of a clash. But we managed to handle that very effectively for the simple reason is that, as you rightly pointed out, there was no trust deficit there. The fact was that prior to the incident also, we had developed a strategy of policing being very fair and transparent. All officers from the level of sub-inspectors upwards were to a large extent free from any political interference or otherwise, as you normally hear about in the press and you hear about everywhere. Because of that, most of the police officers were able to deliver. They were able to deliver whatever they did with a great deal of fairness. And this society generally, and more so in Kerala, because people watch it, people know what's happening. So they were very much happy about the way the police function. Therefore, in any situation that the police handled, or any situation where the police came into play, there was what I would say is that, like you rightly said, there was no trust deficit. They believed that the police would would behave or act correctly and justly. So that was one of the reasons why we didn't have that. Further, you also have to understand that so-called feeling of being on the fringes, or so-called feeling of being oppressed, or so-called feeling of not being factored in. These have to be taken into account by the administration generally. And police plays a very important part in that administration also. Although the district administration or the state administration takes care of that, but to a large extent it is the police administration that will make the change. Because once the police administration is found to be fair and effective, then generally speaking all the other administrative processes will also fall in line without there being any problem. Because as you know, police is one of the main arm of the administration that is feared.
True.
More so because of its powers. But if the powers are generally used in the right way, at the right time, and for the right cause, I think there is absolutely no need to have any trust deficit. This gets heightened when we do not have a setup, or we do not have the sort of a system which is able to address this particular major issue. I suppose in Bombay also the Mohalla committees and all that to a large extent helped to bring about this sort of transformation and bring about that feeling.
Act as a bridge.
It is. There has to be a bridge. And further, I suppose maybe in Kerala we find it different is because the press is very active, plus the media is also very active overall. I mean visual, audio visual, all of them. So because of that, you are always seen.
Okay, noticed.
Yeah, noticed. So what you do is available to the public generally there and then. Perhaps in some other areas it may not be so. But even otherwise, there are large cases. For example, Mumbai police also. They've always been held in high esteem only for a simple reason is that they've always redeemed themselves in tough situations. And that is because they have inherently a good system in place. So even if the officers and the men are at times found to be not wanting in small regard, the system makes up for that to ensure that overall the results are always obtained. So this is one of the most important things with regard to this trust deficit. I personally believe that it has to be something where there has to be an awareness and there has to be a sort of a feeling of empathy created among the officer cadre and the constabulary, so that everybody knows that generally when we put on the khaki, we're addressing the public, and the public doesn't have any distinction of any religion, any caste, any color, anything like that. So if that is predominantly made clear to the men during our training inputs as well as during our interactions, I suppose to a large extent we can tackle the so-called trust deficit.
So according to a recent report, for every about 1,000 people living in Mumbai, there are about only 25 policemen guarding themselves. How do you think this number can go up?
See, this is a very, very pertinent question in today's context. It is not so much the number of policemen to the number of people in society. It is the effectiveness of the police with regard to society which is more effective. But understand one thing is that the police force has to do a lot of duties which are at times not purely policing. If we talk about policing, policing is purely maintaining law and order, maintaining the peace and harmony in the area, and to tackle crimes. But unfortunately, we have a large number of other duties which are, also piled upon us. Today, a lot of social, or I would say, problems which afflict society is also put upon us, like juvenile delinquency. In addition to that, there are atrocities being committed on women. So many things like atrocities on the senior citizens. All these have, led to a situation where the police force finds itself, burdened with the fact that they do not have the resources to tackle that. A is that most of the police force has not been trained when they are trained to tackle such situations which are now, in the domain of the police. In the earlier times, we only learnt about, crime criminals and how to maintain peace and order. But today it's not just that. Today, if you look at any police station, the largest number of cases or whatever situation that they deal with have got nothing to do with pure crime or with pure law and order, excepting in certain cases. So with this, it requires a change in the training sort of inputs to make them, conversant with all these sort of things which are happening.
So you're referring to that they have to go to the grassroots level?
Yeah, we have to change. Policing has to change. There have been certain initiatives. I told you, in Kerala Police, we have done this Janamaitri policing and student police cadet. It's all very good. Unfortunately, they don't deliver. And why don't they deliver? Because the simple thing is that I can't take a policeman who has been training or who has been in the force for about 5 to 10 years and expect him to transform himself to becoming empathetic to society. I can impose upon him by saying that go and do this, go and do that. He will do it routinely. But you need something which is inherent. It should be there within them. That compatibility of getting to tackle certain issues should be available with the concerned personnel. For that, we need to make them, to train them. Perhaps I would even feel that some of them should be specialized so that you can, like happen in the United States, they have separate units for delinquency. They have separate units to deal with certain issues like drugs. Whereas in our case, everything comes under the umbrella of the police.
Sure.
So with the result that police are not able to deliver. Expectations are very high with regard to the police. But to deliver, we need not just manpower, we need the resources and the training and the various type of inputs that is happening to deal with today's society. What happened in the 50s and 60s is not relevant today. We used to have lathi drills. Today, can we go about using lathi drills? Today, the opposition who comes against the police are more armed and they're more well trained than us. So at times, we have to also come one upon them.
If I may ask you a question relating to your state, recently the Ex-DGP of Kerala, Mr. Rishraj Singh, was served a show cause notice by the state government for not saluting the Home Minister. What's your whole take on this current episode?
I am not very conversant with the whole thing, but from the picture that I saw in the newspaper and from what reports that I have got, apparently he was not trying to be unrespectful or disrespectful of the Honorable Home Minister. Perhaps he was not in his line of sight. So because of that, perhaps when the picture was taken, it appeared that he was looking elsewhere and the Home Minister was coming. And as a person, he has worked with me. Mr. Rishraj Singh is a perfect police officer. I know he has always shown great respect in regard to all officers. And as a public servant or as a minister, they deserve to be given the due respect by anybody. You may have any other issues with the person, whether politically or otherwise, but a person who is elected as a people's representative has to be given the due respect and regard that is due to them. And I think in that regard, none of the police officers, especially in Kerala, have ever been found wanting. So in this case also, I do not know much about it, but from whatever I gather, I don't think that the Ex-DGP was in any way disrespectful. Perhaps he was not aware of that, and I suppose he probably has apologized for that, and I think the matter should be settled accordingly.
So one last question. A lot of films are being made on police force and the kind of picture they draw to the people and all. What is your favorite film and which you've liked, or a favorite police character in films, be it Malayalam or Hindi?
I think my film which I found to be more in tune with reality was a film called Company, because that was the first time that they showed a police officer as a police officer. A police officer is not a, James Bond. He is not expected to wear his uniform and drive motorbikes and go speeding on highways and catch thieves and all that. So that was the only first film where I saw that it was properly, the role play of the commissioner in that was shown in the proper perspective as a commissioner.
You're referring to the role of Mr. Mohanlal.
That's right. That's the role I was referring to. But then that is generally today. Do you see the Commissioner of Police Bombay going about on a motorcycle or trying to chase any so-called anti-social elements? You can't do that. So we have a force. Everybody has got a particular role, and understand that police officers at senior level are supposed to be supervisory. You have to get work done. That is a managerial job. You don't have to go around doing the job of what your sub-inspector or your police constable do. Each role is defined in the police because we are hierarchical, and therefore somebody trying to do somebody else's role is not something. Movies, they try to give it that sort of input only because to make it sell.
True.
Because the hero is a person whom they are focusing upon, so he has to be shown to do all sort of stunts. So he is a Rambo, he is a James Bond, he's all rolled into one. But that's not possible. But a police officer in general terms is a person capable of doing that. I must say that. He's a good shot, he's a good rider, because we are all trained in that. And he's also a good manager, because he can utilize the resources available to ensure that things are kept under control, or a tight control. That is the thing.
So, one more question. In your policing career, who was one officer or one senior person who you were always looking up to for his caliber or his achievements or whatever? And can you name somebody?
No, it would be unfair to keep naming anybody, but I suppose I was fortunate that I had some very good officers in the earlier part of my career. Plus, since I also went to Government of India for some time and all that, I have interacted with many officers, and I found, even coming to Maharashtra, there were officers from Maharashtra cadre also with whom I relate to. So generally speaking, we had a good caliber. And even today, the caliber of the officers I don't think is bad or in any way, below par. It is always available. Its only thing is that it has to be leveraged in such a manner that it is able to deliver what society needs.
That was Mr. Venugopal K. Nair giving us vital information from his 35-year career into policing and giving us the enlightenment of what the police force is. With camera person TK Srijit, this is Apurva Bhatt for Media Mumbai.